Alrighty, it looks like everything has slowed as far as the participants joining us. So we're just going to go ahead and get started. Thank you for again joining us for Plan with Purpose. We do have some states joining us to spotlight what they do. So we'll just go ahead and get started. With me also is Hugh Poole. We're going to tag team a brief intro. So, alrighty. So on our agenda today is what is the state plan, approaches the state plan, and then we have our two state spotlights again with Karen Quackenbush and Ben Foltz. So, and then we'll wrap up with a couple resources for you all, and of course our QR code for the evaluation. So, what is the state plan? So, the state plan is essentially your application for CSBG funding. Although it is a CSBG Act requirement, it is more than just a plan or administrative requirement. It is meant to be a tool to build relationships and collaboration, to communicate with your stakeholders. It demonstrates the support of network initiatives. It provides the roadmap for the progress that you at the state is hoping to achieve. And it also offers accountability to our federal partners. So in the next couple slides, we'll discuss what the state plan is a little bit more. So before we jump into the nitty-gritty requirements of what the state plan, let's talk about the goal of what the state plan is. So again, it does satisfy that federal requirement, but the real purpose is to guide the state's vision and its priorities for the CSBG network. A strong state plan clearly articulates what the state is trying to accomplish. It reflects the statewide needs identified through the CNAs and performance data that you get from your agencies. It aligns monitoring, technical assistance, and funding decisions with those priorities that you've identified. And it provides clarity to eligible entities about expectations and the direction the state is planning to take. If the state plan is written intentionally, it becomes a leadership tool, one that drives strategy and alignment and engagement across the network, rather than simply fulfilling a submission requirement. Much like an agency's strategic plan, it is meant to be a living, breathing document for the state office and not just a box to be checked that sits on a shelf and goes no further. Ultimately, your state plan should provide insight if someone reads it. Would it tell them clearly what the state's top priorities are when they look at your state plan? That's when you're writing it, that's your ultimate goal. So, what is the state plan? Again, it is your application for CSBG funding. It's an act requirement and is submitted to OCS for review. States can elect to do a 1 or 2 year state plan. Both states that we have on the call today do a 2 year state plan. Both have their pros and cons doing a 2 versus a 1 year state plan. One plan allows states great flexibility to adapt to the changing needs. One example is COVID. We learned that we have to be quick on our feet. 2 year plans allow time to implement their goals. There's not a constant planning process that is constantly being done when you're doing your 2 year state plan. So it allows you more time to implement those things that you want to do. The state plan has 15 sections, each filling a specific federal requirement. Some state plans are due at the end of August of each year. So some things that your state plan is not. It's not just a copy paste. Some sections you might copy and paste a little bit more, but and more than not, it's not supposed to be a copy and paste deal. Some sections may change very little over the course of 1 to 2 years. You probably won't have many changes in your administrative information, your state legislation or regulations. Hopefully, changes to your eligibility list are also limited. There's most likely won't be changes to the income eligibility threshold for services in your state. In some cases, copy paste does make sense. But for the most part, copy and paste shouldn't be your first choice when completing your state plan. The state plan, again, isn't just another pointless task or another useless document. Your state plan is an opportunity to identify important activities and initiatives that you want to accomplish at the state. Just as you're eligible into strategic plan, it shouldn't be completed for requirements sake and stored away and never to be thought of or looked at. The state plan is a great opportunity to engage the network in conversations about their goals and objectives in order to find ways that the state can be supportive. It's basically a cumulative of collaborative conversations about how the network is going to reduce poverty and move people towards self-sufficiency in your state. It's lays out the roadmap for getting there. Again, it's a living, breathing document. So it's not meant to just sit somewhere and never to be looked at or thought of again. So before you start your state plan, it's important to determine what your strategic priorities are. What does your state want to achieve in the next year or two? How does your state plan to achieve those goals? What is the most pressing needs that your state is facing? What does your state network want or need? Understanding these questions and possible challenges helps lay the foundation for your state plan. If you don't have a goal, then how can you develop a state plan? So, where do some of the goals come from? When developing your state plan, strategic priorities should not emerge from a single source. Some plans are informed by multiple Strong plans are informed by multiple inputs that together tell a coherent story about need, direction, and the opportunity. So, your CNA is one primary anchor. It identifies recurring themes and statewide trends. It highlights systematic barriers and emerging needs. Priorities should clearly connect back to the CNAs that your CAAs submit to you. Should also incorporate some of the CAP plans, community action plans. You should be looking for patterns across agencies. What agencies are prioritizing locally? Where's their alignment or a disconnect? Local plans help ensure your state plan reflects network realities. More often than not, states operate with a broader executive priorities. So, what is your administrative directives wanting you to do? Aligning directives with CSBG anti-poverty mission is a practical and program relevant way to build your state plan priorities. Some states have legislative mandates that they're going to have to implement. So your state plan is an appropriate place to clarify how the state will meet those mandates within the CSBG framework. It demonstrates responsiveness, transparency, and accountability. Your annual report is also a goldmine to help you determine possible priorities. You can start by looking at multi-year trend data, determining where outcomes are strong, where there are gaps. Priorities should either build on success or address areas needing improvement. And lastly, you should be getting your priorities from network and community engagement that strengthens your strategy, excuse me. The network's strongest state plan reflects not just compliance with public hearing requirements, but also incorporates meaning engagement early in the process. And we'll talk about some of that engagement piece and how to get that feedback from the network and the community later on. Um, but we wanted to kind of open up discussion to you all to identify where you're getting some of your strategic priorities. Um, uh, where do your priorities typically originate from? Again, we said CNAs, but are there other places that it's happening? Who are your typical stakeholders? And then how are you going about getting any input? Are there any creative ways or ideas that you have that helps increase that engagement, especially when it comes to any of the public hearings or legislative hearings? So if anyone has anything that they think is neat and they want to share, please, we welcome your ideas before we move on. ECSI scores, Heather Ross says. Yes, that's another great place to look. Um, and develop some priorities to increase where you want to go as far as your state plan is concerned, and ways to increase engagement if you're looking at the comments too. Jill said we get feedback from CAAs on what they think we should be working on. Great. And do you get that through surveys, or you do that through like work groups or open discussions, office hours, anything like that, Jill?
Open discussion during a meeting we have together.
Awesome. Thank you. Ben Hull in Michigan holds virtual meetings to gather CAA feedback, and we target senior leadership. Awesome. Thank you, Ben. And has anyone had any specific luck getting that engagement during any of the public hearings, getting your CAs to show up or the community show up and share any type of feedback? We know that seems to be the biggest struggle with the engagement piece.
This is Genevieve. I'm sorry, I'm driving, so I can't use the chat. Can y'all hear me?
We can.
I was just gonna say that we had our public hearing this past state plan that we did at this. We had the same day as the state association board meeting, and we had it at like the local one of the local workforce offices. So we had some engagement from both the workforce partners there and also the agencies were there because they had been there earlier for their meeting. And I found that when they were in the group like that, they were more likely to, comment and bring things up in that setting.
Great. Thank you. Does anyone else have anything that they want to share about their engagement piece or how they're identifying their strategic priorities or even navigating some of those fun challenges regarding determining their strategic priorities before we move on, or if there's questions too? All right, seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and pass it to Hugh.
Thanks, Lauren. Thanks for the comments, folks. All right, so before we go ahead and jump into our state spotlights, which will be the highlight of the call, let's just take a step back and maybe get a broader top-level understanding of why and how we're doing this in the first place, and maybe give you a couple of pointers about how we can approach this. What are some things to consider, especially if you're new to the state plan process when doing the state plan? A couple of things we've got up here on the slide. You've got to consider, materials, people, time, and then just kind of this other bucket that we call miscellaneous. Under materials, do you have for instance, a copy of previous year's state plans, just to use as something to jog your memory about what that might look like, what's involved. What about Word templates of the state plan to be able to easily fill in instead of PDF forms? How about templates for public notices, website postings, things like that? So just trying to put together all the things that you're going to need to work with or work in. In terms of people, who needs to be reviewing the plan? So who within your administration, your management chain is going to need to look at it? Who does or what does your leadership structure look like? If this is kind of your first approach to the state plan, you're going to need to check into that. Who needs to be involved? In that whole kind of like putting that together, and that doesn't just necessarily mean your management team, but like who out in the network do you want to have involved in that as well? So, who do you need to work with to set up a place to hold your public hearing? That can be intimidating if it's your first time. And who in your state is responsible for certifying your state plan. So that can be different than who needs to review it, depending on your organizational structure. And does the person who needs to certify your state plan have access in OLDC, the online data collection system? If they're new to your to your office, you may need to get them set up. So just a couple of things to tick off your list as you're getting prepared to do the state plan. And then in terms of time, and this is a big one, especially if you're new to the process, what's your timeline going to be for instance, posting for public inspection? What's your timeline for public comment? And then just kind of thinking through everyone else's schedule. So your management team, any of your stakeholders, certainly the CAAs, the state association, how you plan to get feedback, CAA network, like their meetings, conference calls, webinars, any of those things. How long do you expect all of this information gathering to take? And trying to map that out in advance, because on top of all the other things that you have going on, that can rapidly, the state plan deadline can rapidly come upon you. And then under that miscellaneous bucket, again, going back to like who needs to review the plan, and not so much within your administration, but like who else do you want to have looking over this plan? Um, what's involved in getting the legislative hearing scheduled if it's within that 3-year time frame and you need to schedule one of those. That can be an involved process for making that happen. And then once the public comment, public hearing has taken place, then what? And what's involved in all of that piece. So these are just a couple of things. They're certainly not all of them, but just things to kind of put on your list of things to consider and incorporate into the state planning process. All right, so now we'll just kind of move into establishing the framework for yourself. So before you ever start, writing or developing the plan, it's helpful to have a structure, confirming any of your submission timelines, reviewing requirements under the Act, expectations from OCS, maybe identifying a point person responsible for coordination if you've got multiple people in your office. If you don't, that's probably going to be you then. Distinguishing between some compliance sections, sections like the assurances and certifications, and then other sections that are kind of strategic sections like your priorities, TNTA, monitoring alignment, uh, use of discretionary funds, things like that, where you have some leeway in terms of what you're going to be able to do. And then kind of building a backward timelining, meaning like here's your deadline, like how are you going to work through all the other things in terms of building your planning calendar, like engagement activities, which hopefully will begin at the beginning, draft development of the plan, the public hearings that come after that, any internal review that needs to come in either on an ongoing basis, or multiple times throughout the process, and then the final revisions, and then obviously submission. So, planning out your process prevents the plan from becoming, rushed or copy paste from the previous year, whatever, any of those things, and ends up being a nice quality plan that includes a lot of input from your network, from any other stakeholders, and is a good forward-thinking plan to help drive change in your network. So to that end, NASCSP has kind of developed this state office action plan that kind of incorporates a number of the things that we just talked about. And we'll include this in table of resources that we'll provide at the end, so I'm not going to spend too much time covering it, but it lists a number of the things that we just talked about, and I'm going to move on to the next slide because it's a little bit easier. Just kind of highlight some of the things that we mentioned, so you can go through it and kind of fill out the who, the when, any of the dependencies, like for instance, if you're talking about, gathering input prior to draft, well, who's going to be involved in that? Like, and meaning specifically who, not just a broad category of EDs, but EDs at the CAAs, but it might also include like their names, might include the state association, might include stakeholders within your organization, might include stakeholders outside of any of the folks that I just mentioned, like folks at WIOA. There might be any number of folks. So just it's a thought-provoking exercise to walk through all that. It also includes a column for tools and resources and things like that. So a great resource, especially if this is your first or second time going through the process, to kind of just jog your memory about things you might not have thought of. So we'll include that link to the tool on our website at the end of the presentation for you. All right, so now we're getting into that part of the plan where we're defining our strategic priorities that Lauren had talked about earlier in the presentation. So those include things like CNA findings, performance trends that you might want to be looking at, any administrative and administration context that they may be feeding you, legislative direction, and naturally, of course, any stakeholder input that you're getting. So the question becomes, like, how do you translate those identified themes into some clearly defined priorities within the state plan? Strong state plans will do, 5 things when defining priorities. They'll state, a priority clearly, so they'll avoid broad statements, so clarity will help to drive implementation, right? And then they'll explain the rationale or the why, right? They'll tie the priority directly to a CNA theme. What's the need that's out there, or they'll tie it to a performance trend or to stakeholder input, right? So they'll just demonstrate the why, right? And it'll be data informed and intentional. They'll also define the state's role. What's the state office going to do differently? Will it be adjusting funding, targeting, monitoring, providing focused TNTA, right? Any of those things. Then it'll describe what success looks like, and I identify the intended impact. So an improved outcome, stronger capacity, better coordination, things like those, right? And then lastly, it'll connect to accountability, explaining how progress will be reviewed and adjusted over time. So a strategic priority like that should be clear enough for readers or listeners to understand what will change because of what it is you're proposing. All right, so that moves on to this next piece, which is engagement. We talked about that in terms of some of the number of things you want to be thinking about in terms of the timeline that you're building. Engagement really shouldn't just be viewed as kind of a procedural requirement or something that you kind of like only done through like a public hearing, right? This really is a strategic tool in helping you to build your state plan. So the goal of engagement isn't just to collect comments on a state plan that you've already built. It's to create alignment and shared ownership of the plan right from the very beginning. So when the stakeholders see that their input is reflected in the plan, then implementation becomes dramatically easier because it's basically their plan at that point, right? So, like, what are some of the ways that we've seen engagement to get meaningful participation. I think sometimes states struggle with low public hearing attendance. I know Genevieve mentioned that she had some success during the public hearing when her agencies were at a WIOA meeting. So they were kind of in their own space. They were already together for another meeting, and maybe they had already had some great conversation. So, like having certainly not having it in the state office, but removing it to some other space where the agency is comfortable already, and perhaps in a less formal setting helps. But to get really good feedback ahead of time, we want to make sure that we're hosting listening sessions or work groups or whatever method you're using prior to drafting the state plan. Um, if we're coming to the network with a already drafted state plan and saying, what do you think? We're probably going to get a heck of a lot less good feedback than if we ask them for their input and then draft the plan. Sometimes that's possible given your administrative structure. Sometimes it's not, but it's always great to try to do that if you can. Um, Also, as you're starting through the process, once you've got some of that feedback from the listening sessions, trying to send brief summaries of what you're doing instead of the full draft document is helpful because it enables the network to take these things in small bites and can see that that you're making progress as you go. Um, Making sure that you're asking targeted questions that are aligned to the proposed priorities to make sure that you understand what they're asking for, so that you can tie it back to what it is that you'll create or draft. And this one ties back to what Genevieve was saying, but meeting stakeholders where they are. So that's at association meetings, directors' calls, that sort of thing. Not necessarily dragging them to the state office with a formal meeting and that sort of thing where they're less comfortable. And then clearly communicating how input will influence revisions to the state plan, like last year's state plan or whatever the case might be. All right. And then just want to speak briefly about the value of doing all this. Engagement basically improves the quality of state plan. If it identifies operational challenges early, if it clarifies unintended consequences, like for instance, if one of the things the state is planning to do doesn't come across clearly, but you have conversations around it that eliminates like a misunderstanding. That's a great way of utilizing that engagement process to eliminate problems right from the very beginning. If it highlights regional variation that like aggregate data might miss, that's a great way of including that sort of thing. But lastly, and most importantly, it builds trust between the state office and the eligible entities because it demonstrates that you're interested in what it is that they want to see. So engagement might feel difficult, especially if it's the first time that you're doing it. Sometimes you have to play around with different ways of getting it. But it's absolutely worth it in the end because your state plan will actually mean something to your stakeholders and your network, and you'll end up getting much better input over time. So stick with it, even if it's a little uncomfortable in the beginning. A couple of tips about engaging stakeholders intentionally. Uh, as we've kind of already mentioned, just try to engage stakeholders intentionally. It should be built into the process. Um, Certainly not added on at the end. Certainly not like the only engagement is after the state plan's been built and we're just doing it through the public hearing or the legislative hearing. It should be an ongoing process in whatever way in whatever way works for you all. But we mentioned, asking um, structured, inquisitive questions that are aligned to the priorities, using the state association meetings or whatever other meetings they're comfortable with to gather early insight. Some states use defined work groups uh, to work on specific portions of the plan, gather that input, and then incorporate it. And again, providing those executive summaries to encourage ongoing participation throughout. It's just that back and forth engagement that really helps and smooths out that um, implementation process. So, okay, so we're almost to the point of the state spotlights, but just want to ask a couple of questions here. Aside from the things that we already mentioned in this presentation, like what are some of the ways that you have specifically engaged your network? And of those strategies, what have worked to increase participation? We'd really love to hear that and have you share those. So if you could put those either in the chat or jump on jump on your microphone, we'd really appreciate it. Any ways that have worked to um, get more feedback from your network or from other stakeholders outside your network, maybe that have worked to improve the state plan. Genevieve's borrowed idea from other states to have a state plan committee comprised of both the CAAs and the state association. Thanks, Genevieve. Anyone else?
Hugh, this is Nikki from New York. We work closely with NISCA, our state association, to develop a state plan work group, and work with them to generate ideas for specific parts of the state plan, and then also bring it back to like regional meetings before we go to a legislative hearing or um, the public hearing for the state plan.
Oh, that's great. I
Mhm.
like that. I see Lindsay agrees with Genevieve. They've done that something similar as well. And looks like Ben in Iowa sends a survey to the network, and most of them respond. It sounds great. So it sounds like there's a number of different ways that you can manage this. So as long as you're reaching out and doing something somehow to get their input, that's fantastic. Appreciate that. So I think that Lauren already tagged onto this question about success with engagement at your public hearing, and I know Genevieve mentioned that already. Anyone else have any success? I know this is a really difficult one because we this is one of those ones where we seem to get really low engagement slash feedback. Is anyone out there having like a really good response rate at these public hearings?
They're supposed to be public at the public hearings. We at Nebraska, we usually have one agency come and they, I guess, as a whole, the nine or all the networks feel like that one person, because they live here, is kind of representing all of them. And so he like will give a statement that says, you know, I'm from this agency and I'm representing the network and we are supportive of this plan or all of Nebraska's agencies or whatever. So he kind of has a blanketed thing he says at the public comment period or public hearing, which is
Uh-huh.
nice, I guess. It's better than nothing.
Got it. And you get the sense that he's had a conversation with the other agencies beforehand?
Yes.
Got it. Well, that's good. It's better than no response at all. Okay, well, I appreciate that. I mean, I know this is a difficult one for many states. So if anybody does have something or runs across something, it looks like Genevieve's put something in the chat. Oh yeah, I we did hear about that where they had a joint LIHEAP / CSBG public hearing in the past because they had better attendance. So, Genevieve, maybe I can ask you this. Do you know if LIHEAP is doing something different in their public hearing that drew better attendance?
I'm not sure. This was before I was in this role that they had done that. We tried to do it these past couple of times, but the time frame didn't line up very well. But I, the sense that I got was that they had some better attendance because, I mean, they had more people show up because they had people that were, wanting to sort of express some negative feedback. And so I think that they
Uh,
had people, and again, feedback is feedback, right? Like if more people show up then and you do a joint hearing, then you at least have that audience, and maybe they also would want to comment on the CSBG one as well. But that's the sense I got. And I don't know if there was something going on in the state at that time that they were just having, like, I think maybe it was around the pandemic. So that was probably why, actually, now that I'm thinking about it.
got it. Got it. Jessica says that Illinois uses surveys to gather feedback and interest. Small working groups, sounds right. Quarterly, wow, that's good. Different sections of the state plan, right? Focus on shared portions, presenting at annual meeting, which is what, in June, Jessica, and gather feedback then too. Yeah. Uh, in Missouri did a joint public hearing with LIHEAP and CSBG, same providers. We didn't do it this past year though. Okay. And how was that, Pamela? Did it turn out like when you did do that? Did you get better feedback than when you did it by yourself? No difference. Okay. All right. Thanks, Pam. Thanks, Jessica. Georgia meets with the network to review or answer questions and concerns regarding the state plan prior to the public hearing. Great, great. Thank you, Genesis. Okay, well, I'm looking at time. I want to make sure that we've got plenty of time for both Karen and Ben to share their stuff. So I am going to hand it over to, I know there's a couple slides I'm skipping over, but I want to make sure that Karen and Ben have plenty of time. So with no further ado, Karen, I'm going to pass the baton to you.
Thanks so much, Hugh, and thanks everybody. I mean, I'm like taking mad notes. That's what I love about this. We have such an amazing network, and so many of you, Heather, Jill, both Bens, Nikki, Lindsay, Genevieve, always go to Genevieve, Jessica, Pamela, Dennis. You guys all have such great notes. You should all be leading this, you know. But anyway, I'm Karen Quackenbush. I'm the manager, CSBG manager for the State Office Utah. And I will share this really quickly in terms of attendance of public hearings. What I did the last go around, and we are actually developing our 27-28 plan right now, is I had a training, a mandatory training, but we made it really fun for everyone. And so we had all the agencies attend, and they had identified to us a priority of getting together in person. So we kind of facilitated that. We did have some training that Ansert provided in terms of using your data to tell your story well, but then we coupled it with literally bead making and fun things, like different activities, fun things that people do not get to get away with. And it was a superhero theme because we really wanted to celebrate the agencies with what they'd done. And it was a time for us to give back. So I offered that. We did get all that attendance. I can't say that we got other outside network participation, but we at least got network participation. So if we go to the next slide, you'll see that the reason we're a small state, we get about 3.9 million. We got that in FY25. Let's just hope FY26 comes rolling out here soon, right? I'm the manager, but I'm really the only person, and I actually have multiple programs. So in terms of CSBG, I have to be super strategic with my time, and that's really what my part of this is going to be. Is like, how do you do this lift and manage other things at the same time and do all these great things that Hugh and Lauren were talking about as best I possibly can. But like I say, I'm taking notes from what you all are doing too. So I offer this humbly. In Utah, we've got 9 community action agencies, 4 are private, and 5 are public associations of government. As they basically work over as an interlocal agency across multiple counties. And in Utah, we also have a strong partnership with the state association. And this could be a topic for a different time, but what happens when your state associations changes exactly what it is. So we're dealing with a lot, which means time management becomes that much more efficient. So if this is helpful to any of you, I humbly offer it, but my salvation for taking on the state plan and trying to gather all the input and parts that we need is a serious timeline. And if you're not interested, just close your eyes for a couple minutes and then we'll be done. But what we do in Utah, and it's written into our policy, is we combine our 2-year plans also with updating of our funding formula. And if y'all have done your formula updates before, they also require public hearing, public notice. And so it just makes sense to dovetail it. We are a base plus percentage state. Our formula is simply a $50,000 base plus each community action agency's percentage of the CSBG eligible population. So we update that percentage every 2 years. And we've formed a work group to start looking for the 2930 state plan. So that's when we talk about time management, to see if we need to update the base. But what happens in terms of thinking about a state plan? So I have one that's going to be due. The technical deadline written in statute is September 1st for our state plans. I love, love, love that Lauren and Hugh are saying August, because all of you guys who've played around with OLDC, we know it doesn't always work well. So for me, the deadline is always mid-August, and that way you have time to be able to deal with the inevitable glitches that you have. But I start about 10 months in advance in December, the prior December, to submission. Actually, it's like that November, I should say. So wherever we are in that, to let the network know, hey, we're going into a new state plan cycle, and which also includes the update on the formula. And it generally, the we use ACS statistics, and their 5-year statistics are published in December. So it's just ahead of when the new stats are published. And we have a very specific report that we go to and that we've been using. And so I'll pull all of that in December, knowing that December, January, I'm going to have one-on-ones with my agencies where I'm going to be talking about their updated percentage that would apply to their funding formula with that next plan that we're drafting, what the impact is, what they need, what their concerns are. It's also a time for me to just chat with them because it's all part of this larger project we're taking on, which is the development of state plan and things that individually that they'd want to share with me that they'd want to see in that. So we do that into January and February. For all you guys who are tracking, that's also while we're doing annual report. That's all good. And in this particular year, things got kicked back because of the government shutdown in October. Those stats were delayed from a December publication to the end of January publication, which made things, like I say, we just roll. But what is part of our process is that our state association holds a round table. It's a virtual one, because we kind of have a big geography, um, with all the state association, with all the eligible entities. And they do walk through the entire plan, but they've known about this. They've had sort of some brief meetings and topics about it in advance, and they walk through the different sections of the plan to gather input and thoughts on each section. Then, in addition to that, the agencies are encouraged to send anything that they're not comfortable talking about. It could be directly to me, it could be just directly to the state association, any way that they want. So what I do is I call into about the last half hour of that meeting so that they can ask me anything directly. But, for lack of a better term, the state isn't there because we don't pollute the environment of the meeting. They're able to have their conversation and speak as candidly as they want. And then the information gathered is not identified. What's been shared is not identified per agency. It's presented to the state as like, these are the suggestions, this is what they'd see, these are the changes that they want. Where Hugh had pointed out that it's important for agencies and part of the engagement to feel like their voice is represented. It's part of building the ownership that it might be a task for the state office, but the ownership should be through the entire network. This is our plan. They should see their voice and be able to read and understand see their input into that document. And so I'm pretty mindful of that, of making sure folks are seeing what the last plan they asked for a tweak to the mission, and we embraced it. And we said that's fine and that's great, and that they could see it and where the changes were right there. So we had, but most active discussions, I should say, generally focus on teaching and technical assistance, as well as the use of discretionary, which we don't have a lot of, but it's mostly, do you need to see things handling different, or are there gaps that we need to address? What do we need to do? So that is all in March, and then going into April. So where we're getting right now is I'm starting to draft the plan, and Utah puts a pretty high priority on 50,000 foot language. We might have priorities within the network. For example, we've identified supporting a vibrant and robust data culture as part of our goals, but we don't go down like it's like with the boards, right? In terms of what you're doing with your bylaws versus your rule, right? And one's easier to adjust and swing to than what we've got with the bylaws, right? So it's the same thing. Our particular attitude towards the plan is it's this larger guiding document, and then a lot of the details that we've actually fleshed out in our own operations. So if we go on to the next slide, so that is what we're doing, and where I am right now is in terms of drafting the document. We have a variety of levels that seems to always change, but anyway, in terms of how far it needs to go for internal reviews. But what I've done in terms of public comment is I've set a probably unnecessarily large length of time period for public comment, public inspection. And we post it a month before the public hearing, and we close it a month after. And it gives plenty of time for the agencies, because it's posted publicly, but it's also shared and sent specifically to our agencies to say, do you hear your voice? Do you see your voice? Do you see your participation? Plenty of time for everybody to go through, make sure that things are as expected, that if there's any conversations that need to be had, we have those. So that is, posts in June, which basically takes away my summer. So that's the reason why I need to have a lot of planning, and all the ducks need to be in a row in advance. So we do our public hearing generally the first week in July. And like I say, we combined it with a fun training to encourage our CAAs. And last go around, we did get everybody, and it just seemed to work, and folks had a lot of fun, and it was just nice for the network to get together. We closed that public comment a month after our public hearing. And then I try and have everything submitted in OLDC, like I say, by last week of August is really like the second week if I can. I've I've struggled sometimes with OLDC. I've been in this position since 2016, so yeah, I've had some different experiences. So I've once or twice or three times burned, a couple of times shy. So I really try and lead a lot of lead time there for that. So that is like, for me, a useful, thanks, Amy. That's a useful timeline. It helps me when I'm managing other programs as well. Where do I need to be when? What are my actions? What do I have to do? And as Hugh pointed out, you need to be working perhaps just as much in advance if you're trying to get on a legislative calendar. This does not include, this has the public hearing on it, but you need to be mindful, of course, of where you are in that 3-year cycle with your legislature, since that will be one of your attachments to your plan. So I find that creating the process, whatever it is that you decide to build or do as your timeline and your process, just make sure you're allowing for challenges. I mentioned the delay in the publication of the ACS stats, staff changes. So I used to have a staff and I don't right now because we've put a pause until we get things a little bit more clearly funded, a little bit more stable in our funding. So it's just meant that my timeline had to stretch out a little bit more to be able to get all the things done that need to get done. It also, in terms of building in and having the planning, it really does give that time for meaningful input from the CAAs. I find that even if they're talkative, even if you have great relationships, and I feel like I've got strong relationships with my CAAs, that repeated direct invitation, and especially if anybody's new that you're working with, it's like giving them permission, right? That they know that this is their place and that they need to be to sharing and help directing. And it does help build that whole collective ownership. And then a thing that I like about this whole thing is I lay this all out with my agencies. They know what my timeline is. They know what we're trying to do, what the expectation is. I believe in transparency. I actually, in terms of the funding formula, giving them a source, how they can do it, how they replicate it. I share the data that I pull. I do it all so everything can be replicated. And it just helps them know, you know, sometimes folks don't immediately place all that faith in the state office that this is where the numbers actually are. So that's some things that I've taken away from my experience. I think that it's important to keep in mind like your relationships with your community action agencies and the state association. Um, do do they feel that they've got the necessary support, the tools, the partnership to meet the goals of the state plan? Are we like setting them up to fail? If we're saying in Utah, we say 100% compliance with the organizational standards, that's expected. That's what we're doing. That's what we're putting out in our state plan. Is that doable? Is that attainable? Or have we set folks up to fail? Um, uh, do again, when I say you need the invitation for people to feel like they're comfortable sharing and participating and to make sure that they feel heard and recognize and see their voice in it. One thing I would add is that it's sort of fortuitous that while I'm talking more about the ways and what we're doing for this big task, it's good that OCS is now offering, and if I'm sure you guys all saw the webinars that are actually going to go into the deep dive on the actual contents and then what they expect to see on those 15 sections, just starting on the 2nd and the 7th and the 9th of April. So that seems to dovetail really well with this particular presentation. The other thing I would underscore is for efficiency, how helpful it is, and this was something that Hugh was just sharing about keeping whatever template. So whether it is your template for how you are writing up your public notice or even the emails for publications and these types of things, I'm just in it all right now. And I know what I'm pulling up and updating. And it's just a time saver than when you don't have to do everything from scratch. So hopefully that was helpful. I don't think I have any more slides, Lauren, do I? Oh, I do. There we go. Um, Transparency, simply what I said. We do, when it comes to the formula update, give the agencies everything so that they can recreate what we say their percentage is. And I mentioned that I do share the timeline for plan development, and everybody knows how and in what manner the state office and the state association are coordinating. So we just keep everything out in the open. And like we say, with that greater goal of what Hugh was underscoring is to have the shared ownership of the plan, that it is a CSBG network owned CSBG plan, right? That it's not just a deliverable of the state office. So I think I'm ready for any questions, if there are any. Otherwise, I know Ben will share some great things for you.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Appreciate you joining. Thanks, Karen. Yeah, my name is Ben Fall. I am the CSBG Program Administrator for the state of North Dakota. I have been in this role now for a couple years. I've done 2 state plans. And every year I get a little bit better at doing it. As Karen mentioned, we humbly present these processes and timelines, and there isn't a one size fits all. And I have gleaned so much knowledge from Karen and her just transparency, as she mentioned. That is something that she definitely lives by, and she's been very open about sharing to me processes that will help North Dakota. And so I've really taken that to heart, and tried to make our processes as easy and simple as possible. So North Dakota, who are we? So we are a small state. We get about 3.7 million in CSBG annually. That's what we got in fiscal year 25. We, like Karen, are a office of one. And so it's just me. And I mean, I do have some help at the state level as well to coordinate and get some feedback on things, but it is me at the state. We have 6 community action agencies. All are private. We have 2 agencies that have 2 regions. I'll dive into a little bit more depth on that later. But yeah, one thing we really pride on in North Dakota is our state association relationship. As Karen mentioned, relationships are so vital to the success of CSBG and the state plan. And Andrea at our state association is a champion for me. She helps collect data and just get feedback from our agencies that don't want to share it with me directly. We get a more unified approach to the state plan through her. So it's extremely vital. You can go to the next slide. What I wanted to show is similar to Karen. Can you tell I kind of matched her on the whole PowerPoint? She did such a great job. I'm just going to follow along. So for North Dakota's process, we do a 2-year plan. I submitted last year, so in 2025, for fiscal year 26 and 27. And I just kind of want to run through what the year looks like for me. In January, I present to the legislative members our use and distribution plan, which details what the state plans to do over the next 2 years, and also details success stories and statistics on what we have done in the past and And so I do that in January, and then in the first few months with our state association, we hold these meetings with our executive directors. And this timeline isn't very accurate. Like, don't keep me quoted on what I do in April and June, but it it fluctuates, as we all know, things change. But we have cap ND meetings, and it's at this cap ND meeting that I present to the executive directors our plan for the year and for the state plan to be successful. I inform them that I do want their draft community action plans by June, and during the next few months, I hold these open office hours. So for anybody at the agencies, the executive directors especially, like I want to get their feedback on or just their process in doing their community action plan. That way I can incorporate that into a draft state plan. So I hold these open hours meetings where they can come in and voice any drastic changes, any ideas, new programs that they want to create or implement. They want me to have implemented in our new plan. And so these happen throughout the year, and they've been very successful. Uh, the the state plan hasn't changed, like our process hasn't changed a whole lot, and that's okay. Like if it's successful, like why break it, right? We don't need to fix it if it's not broken. And so um, once the executive directors they submit their draft community action plan to my office, then I do reviews of those plans. I get comments, and then I incorporate their plans into my state plan for a more cohesive message on the draft plan. We can go to the next slide. The second half of the year, once I get that draft plan created, I send that it's not really the final draft yet, but I send that to the executive directors prior to posting it online and with our state newspapers, just trying to get the message out for our public hearing and for the open public comment period. And like most states, I don't want to generalize, but the public hearing for North Dakota has been, I don't know, a struggle. It's not been something heavily attended. Our executive directors do attend. We haven't gotten a lot of just general public attendance. And so I like the ideas that people are kind of proposing. I have always held it at our commerce building, and maybe that does come across as intimidating. And so just, I'm still learning. I'm still taking notes, just like everybody else is here. But yeah, once we go through, or once I do the public hearing, we do it virtually and in person. And I run through all of the sections of the state plan. I'm going through any, especially changes, but just going through the plan in general, hitting all the goals, how we plan to meet those goals, any changes in our agencies, which did happen this last year, and yeah, it's not a long public hearing. I don't know how long other people's ours, but ours lasts pretty short and sweet. And then we move into the public comment period does close soon thereafter. After the public hearing, I gather more comments from the public and the executive directors, and then I finalize a draft state plan that I submit to other personnel within the state and our directors. The state association obviously is heavily involved in this process too, gathering feedback from our agencies. Because yeah, having ownership of the state plan, it's not just me pumping it out to without any cookie cutter. We don't want to just copy and paste. Getting their valuable feedback is important and is included. So I want them to know what it is prior to the public release. And unlike Karen, I usually submit like right at the deadline. So maybe a few weeks before, but it's kind of where I like to keep it close. Next slide. So some of the lessons that I've learned just this last year with the state plan, with future funding uncertainty as we're all navigating, is what does the plan look like with if our allocation changes? I've had to have conversations with our agencies on adapting their community action plans to meet more fundamental needs if funding changes or if we don't get as much, or like personnel changes, even hard discussions. And then knowing that the language in our state plan has to be flexible, and being able to go into that state plan and make those changes in an ever-changing atmosphere that we live in. Staff capacity, I'm one person, so I try my hardest to keep the process simple yet effective. Doing the normal things well, trying to provide good communication at the beginning of the year at all of these CAP-ND meetings that we do. I provide updates, gather questions, keep them in the loop on where I'm at, and making sure the expectations are known, that the directors know what I expect from their state plan, and that I know their expectations of me, and that they can have their voice heard. And so this year, also a big lesson was we had to navigate a de-designation for the first time, and so this was a brand new process for me. I had some idea how to do it, but kind of going into it heavily relying on our federal and state partners. And this was right in the middle of our state plan submission. And so our state plan actually got submitted prior to the agency relinquishing their CSBG funds. And then after we submitted, all those actual changes happened. So I had to go back in, and resubmit the plan, do all these changes on the actual state plan. So having flexibility and knowing that things can change, and it doesn't have to be just funding, but actual agency changes. And we had to really amend a lot of our policies and procedures, and making sure our agencies know where the state is within the de-designation process. It was very humbling knowing that, our processes weren't up to speed. And so updating that benefits all. Let's see here, simplified method. Yeah, so as Karen mentioned, and one question that I like to keep at the front of my mind, is this, like, are the agencies, does the state association have necessary support tools, and do they feel like they're partners in meeting the goals of the state plan? I keep those goals simple and attainable, as Karen mentioned, from a really high point of view, broad. And so they have more focused goals within their community action plans, that we meet. And so having the state plan's goals simple and attainable just really helps. We have long tenured and brand new executive directors. And so the directors that have been there for a long time really like the process. And I always thought I needed to change it because I thought it was almost too simple. and like, oh, we have to make it more complicated. And we use our community needs assessment, to really drive these conversations too, gathering the right input. And then just new executive directors that are coming alongside and saying, we have these new ideas. We got this new thing that we want to do. And so just allowing that process to take place within these meetings, whatever. I try to make sure that everybody knows that I have an open door policy, and they can call me and present their ideas, and we can get these incorporated in the plan. Yeah, making sure the agencies feel heard, very important. We need them to take ownership of the state plan as well. What do the states, the agencies and the association value? Predictability, meaningful input, simple, flexible goals. All the executive directors know the timeline well in advance. This reduces last minute scrambles. We want the action plans and the state plan to merge. We want them to be speaking the same language, and providing ample opportunity for feedback to the state association and to me. I know sometimes people are not so willing to speak to the state on changes, and so Andrea is an unbelievable bridge for me that reaches into the agency's voice, and that lets me know like what they're thinking, where they really see the vision of their plans and the state plan going. And yeah, the needs assessment, we do a statewide needs assessment every 3 years. We're in the midst of doing an needs assessment right now. And so the 2023 needs assessment was heavily used for their action plans and the state plans going forward. So very, very important data, and every statewide needs assessment we've done so far has gotten us better data, and we really are beginning to understand just what the individuals and families need in our towns and cities, and simple, flexible goals, like I had mentioned before. Yeah, we can go to the next slide. Okay. Yeah. What do the agencies like? Trust built through consistency. Long tenured executive directors, they appreciate just the continuity. When I ask them for like, what do they want me to change about the state plan process, and I get nothing, man. We like what you do. We feel like our voice is being heard, and so I haven't made drastic changes year over year. We are letting the expectations known, and yeah, we roll with the punches. If we need to make change, then we do that, but we don't do it for change's sake. Yeah, in coordination with CAPND, our state association, just reduces duplication. So I know what the agencies are saying, and the agencies know what I'm saying. And yeah, advance notice. Boy, that's something that I've taken from Karen. She does that so well. And when I first heard that she does it like a year out, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm like 6 months behind. That was my first plan. And so then for my second plan, I'm like, okay, I'm going to tell them at the beginning of the year that this is the plan for due dates and public hearings and all that kind of stuff, because you really do, like, it comes up on you and you're like, oh my gosh, I have to submit this. And if your public hearing isn't planned or the public hasn't been notified, then you're not providing ample opportunity for community involvement. And so yeah, I provide all this humbly because I take everybody's advice to heart as well. And my state association and the executive directors make me look good, to say that. So take any question. I think that's all that I have.
Are there any questions for Ben or Karen on their state plan process before we jump into some resources that are available to you all?
Hey, Lauren.
Yeah.
One thing I just wanted to underscore, it's something I think that Hugh mentioned, but it's a lifesaver, and folks might be overlooking it, and that's the authorized official in your designation, your delegation letters. And if you only have a designation letter and somebody way above you is the one that needs to get into OLDC and certify your plan. If there's any way, if you do not have a delegation letter from whomever the authorized official to that CSBG manager, that is a lifesaver. So that, as you're entering your plan, that you can certify and submit once you've had all your approvals, of course. But yeah, that is a key thing.
Thanks, Karen. All right. Seeing no questions, I'm going to move forward through some resources that are available. Hopefully you all have member login credentials. If you don't, please email me and we will get you hooked up. But once you get in there, once you get your logins, you're going to come to the member resources page. And then you're going to see that state plan page there. There are tons and tons, of state plans that we have. We collect them every year, and I have a running list of whose state plans are due. And so sometimes you'll get emails bugging you to send them my way because we don't get this information from OCS. So we do collect it and we do use it in-house to aggregate data. But you can come in and you can see what Karen is doing. You can see what Ben is doing and see what's working and how they're listing things out. I know Nebraska has also been an ACSI top scoring state when it comes to their state plan. So you can check out what other states are doing. And this is such a helpful tool when you're developing your state plan. So just keep that in mind. We also have the state plan compendium, which has tons and tons of resources. I'm sure you've all hopefully know all about state management work group, but there was a lot of work done on this, and state plan was one of the topic areas that we focused on. So be sure to click on the compendium and see what's working and how states are going about their state planning process. As well as the state management workgroup page and the compendium, we have the data map, which is another great tool. And then we also have tools and resources that come along with the state plan. So one of them is that state office action plan tool that Hugh kind of spoke to. Another one is a tool that was developed for tracking and closing the loop on some of the comments. So be sure to check out all of these resources before you get started on developing your state plan to help make your job a little bit easier. And does anyone have any questions before I close us out of either NASCSP or Karen or Ben? Seeing none, thank you to everyone who attended. Special thanks to Ben and Karen for sharing what it is they do and how they do it so well. Um, uh, and if you could take a moment to scan the QR code and provide your feedback, we do share this information with OCS, but more importantly, we do look at it ourselves to see what we can do differently when it comes to these webinars. So please take a moment and scan and share your feedback. We do appreciate it. And with that, I hope everyone has a good afternoon. We'll gladly give you guys 10 minutes back and we'll see you on the next call. Have a good one, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you, especially Ben and Karen. Great job. Thanks a bunch.
Thank you all.
You all.